Okay, here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is. I hope it's good to be where you are, because it is certainly good to be here. My name is Baltimore Fats, and this is Mud City Road Trip. Yeah! All right. Hello, everyone. I hope you're ready to have a little fun today. I'm ready to have a little fun today. And I had a little bit of fun on Sunday in Georgetown, and so here we go. Mud City Road Trip, Georgetown. Coming in on the bridge, you see this, and of course, coming in on it with this building in the way, I kind of really thought it was a church, right? But it isn't a church. It's what's called Healy Hall, which is the main campus of Georgetown University. And I'm not really going to talk about the history of Georgetown University that much, or really at all. I'm going to showcase Healy Hall here a little bit, because it's really like the first thing I saw coming in on this bridge. And there's so much room. I mean, I'm going to be talking about the history of Georgetown University and the town a lot going forward, so I need to leave things open. So for the purposes of this episode, I'm going to try to be as brief as possible. So let's get into it a little bit with Healy Hall. And here's Healy Hall. This picture, 1904, right? And I'm going to go back. I had to do a restart, right? And so some of these windows are not reset, maybe. So this is the original. They call this Old South, I believe, right? It's going to come back. This is the original campus building, and this is the new one, right? And in terms of this, the newer one, in terms of this photograph in 1904, right? And this, as we'll get into, is the 1870s. They say they built this, right? And well, they let us. Yeah. I think this is as much as it'll blow up. But look, you could see there's already, I mean, there's definitely, that's a door that opens from the ground, right? So, I mean, but fantastic looking building, right? And I'm sure they call this, Gothic, Romanesque, whatever, right? But see, the Old North building, right, is where this started. And here's the original Old North building, 1828, right? Notice it did not have those towers that it has here, right? Which I thought was an interesting detail. And here, of course, it just looks like another warehouse to me. And in the Wikipedia article, they talk about how it was the grandest building in DC aside from the Capitol. Come on now, how far back do I need to go here? I did not just. All right, here's a better view of it now with the, without Healy Hall there. All right, look how high the doorway is. I don't know. We got these fences built up. Again, I have an active imagination and a confirmation and a bias to confirm. Definitely have a bias to confirm. Get me out of here already. Come on. Where's the Wikipedia article? So here we have Baltimore-based designer Leonard Harbaugh, which is interesting that for like the last 8 years, a Harbaugh has been the coach of the Baltimore Ravens. That's an interesting connection there. How does that work, 200 years later? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Healy Hall here. After that, starting at, I guess I started at the true beginning, but maybe should have led there from here. So that building, 1877 to 79, right? from the architect who designed the Library of Congress. And they talk about this cast iron, one of the few extant cast iron libraries is in there. You know, when you click on it, it shows a pot, you know, smelting iron. But Gaston Hall, they should bring up a picture for me here. Gaston Hall is a beautiful lecture space, performance hall, or whatever, you know. So really, gorgeous building. You saw the old pictures of it. You know, this is when they tell you it was built, 1879. You know, there's going to be a lot of room to explore Georgetown with going forward, no doubt about it. All right, and so, before I do this, so that was a little sloppier than I wanted it to be, but I guess I cut to the chase on it. So let's get to the walking. Oh no. So let's get back a little bit to the history of Georgetown, because there's something I want to discuss. You know, when you go over the Google Earth of it, come on. You see some, you know, you get interesting landmarks, right? And one of them, there's two of them right here, and I'm going to discuss both of these. Right? Volta Park and Tudor Place. Right? I was kind of hoping to save Tudor Place for like a surprise ending, but no, you know, there's no coincidences, and we're going to discuss that. And I know, just noticing here, look at the way these two kind of go to a point. That's interesting, these two streets. So I'm going to discuss a little bit of the history of Georgetown and a couple of these interesting places before I do my little picture tour. Okay. So, you know, they talk about Georgetown being a historic neighborhood. Tobacco trading sets up there in the early 1630s. You know, it's part of Maryland. You know, and then in the 1750s, it really starts to pick up there, and that's when, oh, but hold. All right, so we'll start with a little bit of history here with Georgetown. You know, the town itself was founded in 1751, but they talk a little bit about its history and it being, you know, settled as early as the 1630s, with tobacco, of course. You know, and then they talk about its annexation into the federal government a little bit, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, and then how the street names were, you know, converted to match DC proper. All right, so here I thought it was interesting that they felt it important to point out that Georgetown is on the Atlantic seaboard fall line, a 900-mile escarpment where the Piedmont and Atlantic coastal plain meet. They say there's no areas of faulting, but of course, you know, we do have earthquakes here in Baltimore. One, you know, earthquake that I'm still finding damage in my house from. So I thought that was interesting that they felt that was an important aspect to mention, you know, in their basic Wikipedia, you know, page. You know, and they talk, right, tobacco trading in the 1740s, you know, setting up that business model, all these tobacconists, right? And so then they talk about how the province of Maryland authorized the purchase of 60 acres of land from these two Georges here, and one of them, of course, you know, making connections with these names is Baal. You know, I mean, that's unbelievable. You can't make this stuff up, right? And so a survey of the town for Georgetown was was complete in 1752. And yeah, they get into a little semantics about who it was named after, but there's so many Georges involved, just like so many Charleses. I mean, who can tell and why? It doesn't matter. It's named after some George. I think it's interesting also that the first churches weren't Catholic, considering Georgetown. And early banks were established there, 1803. But I want to get into the establishment of the federal capital here. And I think it's interesting. It says George Washington frequented Georgetown, right, including Suitor's, or I'm going to say that's Suitor, right, tavern, where he worked out many deals to acquire land for the new federal city. I think it's interesting because, like, Suitor is in Norse mythology is like the bringer of Ragnarok. I think. And so it says a key figure in the land deals was a local merchant named Benjamin Stoddart. So here's what I'm seeing. 1751, the province of Maryland, under the provincial control of the Calverts, providing land grants to the Carrolls, start quote-unquote purchasing land along the Potomac for a future, well, they just start purchasing land for a town there, all right? 25 years before the American Revolution. And now, to me, I'm thinking there's no coincidence there, all right? They were making their moves 25 years ahead of time there, no doubt about it, in terms of how they set it up, I think, right? Because that's the way it all comes down to, right? And now they bring in this new guy. A key figure in the land deals was a local merchant named Benjamin Stoddart, who arrived in Georgetown in 1783. Now, when they talk about it here, it's almost blasé, right? Like, as a local merchant, Benjamin Stoddart, right? But he was it's why it's like, the next sentence says he was the secretary to the Board of War under the Articles of Confederation, right? And he partnered with General Uriah Forrest to become an original proprietor of the Potomac Company. And now it's this Potomac Company that goes around and starts purchasing land from Maryland and private landowners, I assume, deliberately for the creation of Washington, D.C., right? They create this Potomac Company to do that, all right? And so they agreed to, so the Potomac Company, which purchases all this land, agrees to a land transfer deal to the federal government at a dinner at Uriah Forrest's house. Completely above board, all of this, right? So Stoddart bought land within the boundaries of the federal district, some of it at the request of Washington for the government and some on speculation. He also purchased stock in the federal government under Hamilton's assumption of debt plan. So, I mean, right there, I'm blown away by this sentence because it says that the federal government is a corporation that sold stock, which is an intent to create interest and profit for its shareholders. And therefore, if the federal government is a corporation, then the president is really just the CEO, just the way they had it set up today, right? And they put a CEO in charge, right? They got their guy. He was their Huckleberry. But I think that's an amazing statement. Sold stock in the federal. I mean, what is stock in the federal government today? And that's interesting. Just the way that's phrased to me, and the implication of that phrasing. I don't know. I'm kind of blown away by that. Although it says here his speculative purchases, the ones that he made for the government were, of course, completely profitable, but his not so much, right? And then he was the Secretary of the Navy to John Adams. Um, and then he ultimately owned this Halcyon house near his retirement. So think about this. You know, he's secretary to um, uh, the secretary to the Board of War, right? Whatever, certainly a high-ranking position, right, at the time. And then becomes Secretary of the Navy, which is a really important position. And it shows with what he does. We're going to read a little bit about him, just a little bit, because I think he's an interesting character, and it's just fascinating. One of the things that you find, like, by accident. You know, I didn't expect to find any of this, right? And so he was a local guy. He's from Maryland, right? Charles County. And he served as a captain in the Pennsylvania Cavalry and later as secretary to the Continental Board of War. See, how many boards of war were there? How many men were doing this? You know, but he was injured at the Battle of Brandywine and released from active military. So he established a tobacco export business in Georgetown in 1783, right when he first moved in. Of course, everybody gets their tobacco, right, when they come in. It's like, you know, you're getting jumped in, right? Welcome to the club. Here's your tobacco, right? You know, and he partners with these two guys, you know, Uriah Forrest. I'm not going to get into him or anything like that. But then when Washington was elected as president, he asked Stoddard to purchase land that would become the capital. Because Washington knows, as we established in the little bit I did about the War of 1812, that the federal government is going to be forced to flee Philadelphia due to riots from not paying the soldiers, right? That's the story. And so they're going to need a refuge, right? But it's all been planned, and, you know, all this money has been changing hands and all just ending up back into the pockets of the Calverts and the Carrolls and the Crown. I mean, it's unbelievable. And they saw this stuff coming, you know, 100 years ahead of time, you know, maybe. Right? That before the formal decision to establish the federal city on the banks of the Potomac drove up prices there, right? See? So they knew, right? They even say it right in Wikipedia, they say it, you know? How do people not understand that this is practically criminal behavior? if not outright, right? So he helped found the Bank of Columbia, which I think is interesting because there's no link when it's red, right? It doesn't go anywhere. It does not exist. To handle the purchases of land in the district. So again, it's just like a big money laundering scheme, right? And they set up this Bank of Columbia, which is interesting because, you know, before it was the United States of America, and I'm going to try to remember to look this up. I didn't do it beforehand. But America was called Columbia. So there maybe maps exist where all of what was colonial the United States, there's a map that calls it Columbia. And so this could conceivably be like a sort of first bank of America, the one before the one that Alexander Hamilton sets up, allegedly. You know? And so he goes from tobacco, he goes from serving on the Board of War, right, to being a successful tobacco merchant and land prospector for the federal government to the Secretary of the Navy, right, which, you know, again, improves his investment portfolio through the banks and the creation of the Navy, the building of the boats and warships and things of that nature, right? He gets all a part of that. And then post-Navy life, he settles at this place. They talk about he has a decline in fortunes, right? Because he lost heavily in land speculation, which I don't see how that happened. So there's that's a cover story for something, But he lived out his days at this place called Halcyon House, and I love the word halcyon, and you wonder what kind of glory days was he trying to recapture in that house, and the old boys when they came into town, I'm thinking that might have been Party Central, Halcyon House, just based on the name Halcyon, reliving the glory days, Halcyon being the glory days. So interesting character to stumble across, just, sort of out of the blue in the establishment of the town, right? So I thought that was very, very interesting in terms of our history and people you don't really hear about and that kind of stuff. And so when you go across it, as I did with the Google Earth before, I saw certain things, and so I wanted to come back and read and find out about the Volta, Volta Park and Volta Bureau. And so it's the Volta Laboratory. Now, I have a very private, personal joke. Whenever I see the word Volta, I have to say the Volta. And so maybe I'll link that somehow. So yeah, that's a personal joke for me. But so let's talk about the Volta Laboratory. This is very interesting with Alexander Graham Bell. All right, he created the laboratory was founded in 1880 to 1881, and there's that symmetry, 1881. For the research and development of telecommunication, phonograph, and other technologies. So we're talking, look at that date, 1880. All right, telecommunication, satellites, and stuff like this, right? The laboratories started right in Washington, D.C. I mean, there's no coincidence there, right, that they would have major research facilities with Alexander Graham Bell, right, alleged creator, inventor of the telephone. Although it is interesting that the first laboratories building here is they get bigger digs, and this is converted to a school for the deaf and hard of hearing, and Alexander Graham Bell's wife was deaf, which I never knew. So that's very interesting, right? Also interesting that Alexander Graham Bell was born in Edinburgh. All right. And they credit his phonautograph. Look at that thing. The earliest known device for recording sound. All right, so I mean, when you think about making sound recordings and being able to expose someone to the same thing, the same sounds, in a loop, that's where it's coming from. So very interesting. All right out of DC. And so I thought that was really, really interesting and not coincidental that this type of technological progress would be coming from Washington, D.C. and from Alexander Graham Bell. So, again, definitely leaving stuff open to look at further down the line, but very, very interesting, especially given something else that I find. All right, and so I'm going to do the tour now. Let's get to some pictures a little bit, and some Google Earth. Oh, that's what I should do. I should go start with where I am, because I neglected a certain area of my journey this day, and I'll highlight a little bit why. So this is the area that I'm about to do. All right. So came in from over. We parked around in here somewhere. Came in this way, and I walk up this street for, I don't know. I think up to this church here. So I do quite a long, and I bounce up and down this street. This is, I believe, 31st Street, and I start at 31st and M, or coming around the corner here. And now there are lots of these channels, or canals and locks down in here, right? And so when we got there, I was really excited to see that, and to see that this is really deep down. This is a deep slope, right? And it levels out low, right? And actually, all of this land down here is really low, and this goes up. It's just it's pretty steeply pitched, and that's the deceiving thing about this Google Earth. You don't really get a good sense of the elevation of some of this stuff, right? And so I was expecting to see, because there's a nice row of houses here, I was expecting to see lots of little peeper windows and doorways, really sharp drops, doorways down into basement levels. And there was none of it. And so I wasn't taking pictures, just mental notes as I was walking, because my time was limited. It was a social call to Georgetown to visit friends of the lovely Mrs. Fats. And so I had, just about an hour or so to hit this street. And so if I wasn't seeing sign, if I wasn't if I wasn't confirming my bias, I wasn't doing it. So that's essentially what happened there. But these canals, and the history of these canals is very interesting, and maybe someday I'll get brought back there. But I want to do this slide, so I've already gone well over my timer, clearly, and I have a lot more to do. So let's see what we can do. All right, this is sort of the first evidence that I found, was this window here that came flush with the ground, and then you could see a little drop in property level here. And there's this window hiding back here, right, which looks to be even below the ground, coming down. And you see this type of window, which is very common in Baltimore, and that's what I was expecting to see a lot of this, and I just didn't. Here's some more of that same building. It's a repeat there. Oh, am I going in the wrong? Oh, I'm going in the wrong direction. Gosh darn it. Okay. So, and again, also did not see that much of this, but it was present. It was there. They did a very good job of masking. When they did a lot of reconstruction down here. It's a lion head or some form of big cat up in there. But that was about the most interesting detail of that one. And this is what I was trying to see. Like, this is going down a hill. And in Baltimore, you would see windows all, there'd be peeper windows everywhere here, because you could see the evidence of the windows that were here up above at one point. All right, and now this is classic stuff in Baltimore. And here you could see that they did have to create some form of entranceway into the basement level. So whenever they redid this wall, they took out those windows and hit it pretty good. Nobody's questioning. Nobody's going to ask any questions about weird windows here if they're not looking for them. And that's what I was finding a lot of it. The reconstruction job that they did on a lot of the sides of these buildings really masks a lot of the telltale mud flood signs. And so going up the hill, going up the hill, you know, kind of bouncing around, and I did notice, like this, right? This was like a carved out, like, tunnel almost, entryway, right? Because you could see where these buildings go, right? And I'm walking up a hill, you know, so you can see that this is cut into the ground here, right? And so I was like curious as to what this building was, and it's East Bank Technologies. And so I thought it would be interesting to look at what East Bank Technologies is. And so it's modular technology solutions that enable lasting scalability. You know, that doesn't mean anything to me, but you know, you look at this thing go by, it's crazy, right? And the designs that they show, right? And what they do, their mission statement, right? Let's see. So I'm gonna mute it so as to, you know, this is fair use. And look at that. The first thing they show you is that eye, right? And wait till you see the names of the companies that that come up in this. They're talking about a company that handpicks their, well, they're from the best and sharpest technological minds to create these business technology solutions, you know, for all of those companies. Mission critical systems, you know. All right. This is they helped develop the software for the Washington Post and NASDAQ, right? Time Inc. Hey, oh, look at these companies. It's crazy, right? And they're buried in the ground in this nondescript, like tunnel. And I think that's interesting. Also considering the fact that the Bell Labs, the Alexander Graham Bell Laboratories, the Volta Lab, as he called it, as he named it, with that type of technology, merged with this type of technology, all coming from the same neighborhood, essentially, still to this day. And this, I think, interesting, buried in the side of this hill here. And that's that type of technology. All right, so moving on up the hill, you know, you see some rounded houses that have been clearly modified. But when I see these, they definitely make me think old world. And here they have the hedge growing so high so you can't see the declination there. But I am finding some doorways, you know, that go down. And oh, did I? Oh, I guess maybe I accidentally edited it out because walking up from this, you see the tops of these windows, and there's a hedge like off to this side. Maybe they're just out of order. Yeah, okay, they're just out of order, right? So walking up, you see it that way, right? They have a bush there, but when you walk by it, it's dug out, it's trenched, you know. So clearly a sign of, you know, being salvaged and not part of the design, I think, you know, I mean, to me. And I wish, there we go. You know, way up high off the ground, super low windows. But again, you know, hard to tell with some of these because they've been worked over so many times. It's hard to get a sense of what the original structure truly looked like. But, you know, again, more narrow stairwells down into basements. And that's what I saw most of, these windows, definitely. I mean, when you have to put a grate over them, and that was a steep drop, that was at least a 2.5 foot drop, I would think. You know, bricked up low windows like that, big giant church like this. You know, um, this one's bricked over pretty good. I couldn't tell you. I thought it was interesting also, I didn't catch any of the magnetic stuff from this one. But we have a six petaled flower here with the clovers. Here's the top of that. This wall was interesting. They had to create a door to get up into this little park so high up off the ground. It just goes to show how much of this had to be cut away. And look, you can see this doorway. I think I took a picture of that one. A doorway cut down right next to it. Very, very telltale signs that this is... See, I tried to give you an idea as to how steep this hill is, but it's hard, you know, with cameras these days and the way they change and force the perspective too far away. You know, look at the way this is covered up and concreted over, you know, and then, yeah, I don't know. But that window dropped well below sidewalk, well below. Yeah, you know, you could see it. And yeah, I'm pretty much winding down now. I don't know what I was looking for in this one. Oh, maybe these windows across the way. You know, more low, below level. I think I might have shown that one already. Coming down, this is interesting. This is a giant warehouse complex, which has a ramp going down and all this space down here. But when I look at the way the brick is done here, you know, it really makes me think that this area was dug out and courtyard and created as a courtyard from these extant buildings, and the brick was the add-on. And of course, it was St. Patty's Day, so we met up with some friends, and they had this sign of Rory Gallagher, who's one of the most amazing guitar players ever. Maybe I'll link him today. I don't know. See what I can find. You know, St. Patrick's Day, had to have a couple of those. It was a good day. And then to close it out, an early evening moon, half moon, during the day. Get up nice and close on it. You know, as much as that's as close as I could get. But I love me some day moons, and I'm going to do a day moon show eventually. So, to close out, I want to talk about one further aspect. So, closing out, I wanted to talk about this place, which you saw on the map earlier, right? And one connection that blew my mind when I looked into it, of course, because I think, why would there be a Tudor place in Washington, D.C., right? And not to mention the fact that everything was so Tudor related, you know, and that they were the ruling family 200 years. I mean, the Stuarts came and then the Hanovers came. I mean, you know, I don't understand why everything goes back to the Tudors, because it's the Tudors never left, right? They're all the same. All right, so they talk about how that it was there's the home of Thomas Peter and his wife Martha Park Custis Peter, the granddaughter of Martha Washington and step-grandfather. So Martha Washington had kids before she married George, which is interesting, right? And George left her $8,000 to purchase this property in Georgetown in 1805, right? Right? And they say that would be equivalent to $140,000 today, but I think that's probably wrong. I think it's probably more than that. They also inherited 90 slaves. The Washington state left her 90 slaves. And he sold some of those slaves to purchase this property, right? Which was designed by Dr. William Thornton, who they say designed the United States Capitol, as well as the Octagon House. The Octagon House. Tell me what the Octagon House is. Well, there's the Octagon House. Make of that one what you will. So on September 28th, 1811, Martha Peters' mother, Eleanor Calvert, age 56, a prominent member of the Calvert family of Maryland, died there. And so I want you to think about that now. Martha Peters' mother. And Martha Peter was the granddaughter of Martha Washington. So that means either Martha Washington or Martha Washington's first husband was a Calvert, and that the Calverts have deep ties with the Washington family, just as the Carrolls did, through the Tillman family, who Tench Tillman was George Washington's right-hand man, Martha Washington's granddaughter. Martha Washington is possibly a Calvert, is the way I'm looking at this. And I think that's amazing. You want to talk more proof of collusion? You know, I mean, guilt by association and hearsay, no doubt. But, you know, and Tudor Place is featured in Charles Willson Peale's portrait. No, wait a minute. This is Peter Gage. Oh, this gorget, whatever that is. I don't know what a gorget is. But anytime I see Charles Willson Peale, he's the guy. In my opinion, he's one of the main players in that whole forgery of art and cranking stuff out to create a phony narrative of history. I think he's central in that, and you know, because he also creates the first museums. So anyway, amazing discovery to come away with at the end, and the story of Tudor House is great. You know, there's a lot more history there, but tying the Calverts and the Carrolls to the Washingtons just further bolsters my discoveries, you know, however superficially and heretically. And that's what makes it so much fun. So I'm sorry this one went so long today, guys. I really want to try to keep them brief, but they're, you know, we'll see how long this one ends up shaking out. And look, the Tudor House is just like the Carroll, Mount Clare, right? The Palladian sort of style. It's unbelievable what they how they hijacked the history the way they did. All right, guys. You know, everybody love everybody. You know, please take care of yourselves and each other. And I hope you enjoyed this one. I certainly had a good time. And until the next one, cheers, guys.